In this short tutorial, I will show you the correct pre-flight, taxi and takeoff using the Boeing 777 from Ramzzess Productions for X-Plane. Before you load the airplane, prepare the charts you will be using on the EFP. Copy the charts to the Applications folder. If the charts are in PDF format, press here to change them to PNG format. If they are already in PNG format, press here to change them to map format. Once in map format, put them in the Maps folder. I will explain some of the features built into the simulator. However, please consider that this is a very complex simulation that requires a lot of study from the information included in the docs folder. Please follow these procedures in order exactly as described in the manual or in this video to stay out of trouble, just like in real life. Let's begin with a short explanation of the main menu. You access it at any time by clicking here. While you become familiar with the normal operation, I recommend you to uncheck this first box called Custom Failures, as it will give you some additional problems to deal with, like APU failures, fuel leaks, and things like that. We don't want to deal with those right now. Quick Zoom gives you a panel navigator. By clicking the different zones, you are taken straight to those areas, like the overhead panel, pedestal, CDU, etc. Real time means it will take real time for the ADRIO to align. If you are in a hurry, unchecking this box will give you an instantaneous alignment. Height yoke is self-explanatory, and real limits means G-load limits. I recommend that you left check these boxes here. Okay, it's time now to begin the simulation. We will cover the following phases. To begin with initial loading, it's assumed that you have just loaded the airplane, selected the library of your choice, and deselected custom failures on the main menu. Now, select chocks, stairs, and doors man, which means doors manual, so the doors are disconnected from the emergency escape slides. Now, you can open the doors without deploying the slides. The only doors with movement simulated are second and third doors, both sides. The forward and aft doors will remain closed and armed. Okay, so we have checked the doors man, and now we are ready to open the doors by pressing Shift F1 to Shift F4. The only doors that need to be opened for the main menu to load the airplane are 2L and 2R, and that means Shift F1 and Shift F2 only. But you may open the other doors if you want. Next step is electrical power-up. In the overhead panel, turn on the battery switch and connect the two ground power units or GPUs to the airplane via the main menu. With both available indications lighted, push both external power switches to on. For the loading of passengers and fuel, fill in the blanks. Takeoff fuel is in thousands of kilograms and should include trip fuel plus fuel to alternate. The system will calculate a 5% reserve for you. Finally, we call the passenger box and the fuel track, and we are now ready to begin the loading by pressing the Load Fuel button. Remember, for this loading process to function, the requirements are all these fields ticked, both engines off, both L2 and R2 doors opened, parking brake set, and all these fields with the required data. This here means that the loading process is in progress, and while that happens, we can continue with the pre-flight of the airplane. We cannot turn off the main menu while loading, but we can move it out of view so that it does not interfere that much. Pre-flight procedures for the first officer. In the overhead panel, basically, we need to make sure that everything is set to on, arm, or auto, with the exception of hydraulics and fuel. Things that you may not notice are the cargo temperature selectors, which are way back in the overhead panel. So to reach them, select the overhead panel view, then move the camera all the way backwards, and after that you may even need to tilt the camera a little bit more. Here they are, so set those to low. Now, if you do not want to miss anything, you should set this panel in order from top to bottom, from left to right, making sure that each single switch or selector is in the correct position. If you have done it right, the overhead panel should look exactly like this. Moving to the main panel, we cancel any warning or caution alert. Here, you have the time remaining for 80° alignment. As the right side is not simulated, we will just make sure that you have enough fluid by checking on the MFD engine and status indications. As we cannot clearly see the lower MFD screen, you may select the left MFD and select Engine to check engine oil, select Status to check hydraulic quantities, APU oil, and oxygen pressure. You may also select doors, gears, you got the idea. Now, we set the left inboard multifunction display back to nav and leave the lower multifunction display selected with the status page visible. Set the auto brake to RTO. In the ICAS screen, we get rid of the compacted engine indications by pressing this button and making sure that no red messages are displayed. After reviewing that all the amber messengers displayed make sense, we clear them with the cancel button and again to cancel the second page of messages. Next, if you select the forward pedestal and tilt the camera a little bit forward, you may select this FMC selector to auto. Finally, moving back to the aft pedestal, check that rudder trim is set to 0 and turn on the right radio tuning panel and select the right radio as its tuning radio and the left com as the transmitter. Also, make sure that the transponder panel is set. Next step is FMS programming via the CDU. We always begin by selecting FMS1, review that the information displayed is correct, press here to proceed to the next step, which is position initialization. Enter the most accurate position, which will always be the GPS position. Select the GPS position down to the scratch pad and enter it on the set IRS position. Again, next step, route loading. All the squares need to be filled in. That is mandatory, so if you are selecting the airplane with engines on option on X-plane, please make sure that at least you fill all the squares in the different CDU pages. Dashes means optional information. Enter ICAO codes for origin and destination and press next page to build your route. Waypoints or nav aids are entered on the right and airways on the left. If the flight plane contains several airways, just enter them in order and the system will calculate automatically the crossover point. To enter oceanic waypoints, just type using this format. If you need to enter an exact coordinate, use the long format with no spaces. You may delete also something that is not okay. Once you're done, you review your route by selecting legs and plan on the FS control panel with an adequate range. You will see this step prompt here to scroll through your route. Now we set back to map and go back to route page. To activate the route, press here and here. If you want to save the route, give it a name like Seattle San Diego 1 and press here. To clear or erase all your route, just enter an ICAO code on the origin. It can even be the same one. Route is clear now, and to load a saved route, just enter the name in company route. Route is okay, so we set the flight number. To select the departure, we need to listen to the ATIS first, so we select the chart on the EFB, zoom it in or out and pan it as necessary to look for the frequency. Then we turn on the left radio tuning panel and set it to tune the left radio. Dial the frequency and set that as active. With the left radio as transmitter, we can listen to the ATIS.
Seattle Tacoma Intel Information Alpha.
Now we go back and select departure arrival and select a departure from the applicable runway and choose from the list of available SIDs. One more time, we check by selecting legs page with the chart to make sure everything is okay and activate and execute the changes. There is no need to select an arrival at this time unless your flight is a very short one, let's say less than half an hour flight time. Pre-flight procedure for the captain. Set the FS control panel by setting the minimums to BARO and reset it. Turn the flight path vector to on as desired and set the meters to on if flying in China. Set the applicable QNH, the viewer ADF selectors as required, and set map with a range of 10. Press the traffic switch to on and turn on the flight director. Set the auto throttle arm switches to arm, set the heading track to track, and set the altitude selector from auto to 1000. Next, check the indications on the PFD. They should look like this. Check the ND and they should look like this. These are the only two flags that should be displayed at this time. On the forward pedestal, especially check speed brake forward, thrust levers idle, flap selector up, and fuel control switches cut off. In the aft pedestal, check the left radio tuning panel on and selected to tune the left radio, weather radar panel set, and center radio tuning panel on and selected to tune the center radio. It's time now to select the normal checklists and select pre-flight checklist to make sure you have covered everything. Let's start the APU now, and once we have the APU running indication on ICAS, we can turn off the external GPUs. At this time, the airplane loading should be finished, so we dismiss the GPUs, passenger bus, and the fuel track, and we set the seatbelt to on. If flying online or with ATC, it's a good time to request your ATC clearance. All passengers on board, it's time for performance information entry. In the CDU, go to Index Performance Init page and set the reserve fuel value. Request the final weight values, enter cruise altitude and coast index. Next step and set the thrust limits. I will use a 60 degrees as assumed temperature. Now takeoff ref. Again, request your CG values and set flaps for takeoff. Finally, click the V speeds to make them big, and now set the V2 speed on MCP, ARM, LNAV and VNAV, and make sure that the track and initial altitudes are compatible with your departure planning. All set, so time to close the doors, make some PA announcement to the passengers, arm the doors, and remove the chocks. We now pressurize hydraulics and fuel and set the beacon light to on. Press cancel, make sure that no amber or red messages, and this should be the only 5 white memo messages present at this time. Finally, we set transponder to TA array. Read the before start checklist, and once you are clear for pushback, go to outside view and call the pushback track. Wait until it is securely attached to the airplane, check that the parking brakes are off, that is done automatically for you, and control the pushback with the throttle and the rudders. Once finished, remove the pushback truck, make sure that no thick marks are left and that the parking brake is set again. To start the engines, this airplane has an auto start system, so it's only a matter of sit and watch. We will start right engine first, so we select right engine to start and immediately respective fuel control switch to run. We know that the engine is running in idle when this red start EGT limit disappears. Repeat the same steps for the left engine. Once both engines are in idle, we turn off the APU. If operating in icing conditions, select engine anti-ice selectors to on. Press recall, make sure that we do not have any amber or red messages. Set flaps to takeoff flap setting and check flight controls. Make sure that the trim is set OK and do the after start checklist. We are ready to taxi, so turn on taxi and turn off lights, release brakes and taxi out. Your taxi speed is showing here. Maximum taxi speed 10 knots for turns, 25 knots for straight in. For takeoff, turn on landing lights, select weather and read the before takeoff checklist. Once aligned in the runway, advance the thrust levers to mid position and press toggle button here. Make sure that your joystick does not interfere with your auto throttle settings by setting the joystick levers full forward. On the FMA, you should see this, and after 80 knots, this. Steer to stay on runway centerline, and when reach VR, rotate slowly to an initial pitch attitude of about 15 degrees. Once the altimeter is moving, set gear to up. At 50 feet radio altimeter, the FMA should change to LNAV, and after passing to 100 feet radio altimeter, engage autopilot by pushing this switch here. At acceleration height, your FMA should look like this. Thanks for watching, enjoy your flight, and happy landing!